only outlining one as well as other relevant updates. And then after Dale wraps up his updates, we'll be going through, just procedural items on 2023 committee membership, given that we're approaching the end of our initial 2-year term. Additional discussion regarding meeting calendar and just general topics for our upcoming meetings. And then finally, just going through the ordinance to help guide everybody in that discussion and consideration of future meeting topics. Before we get started, are there any questions or comments? Great. Seeing none, I'll hand it over to Dale.
Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. It's almost the end of 2022. Isn't that nuts? So it's like it was just 2020. So it'll be 2024 before we know it. So I hope you all enjoy the wonderful holidays, and thanks for all joining. As Hagen mentioned, I'm going to share my screen here in a second and just work through some items here. Let me find the screen share thing. And of course, the PowerPoint I'm looking for, I don't see popping up. There it is. Hold on. Tell me if y'all can see my slides.
I cannot.
Not yet. There it is.
Oh, there they are.
Popping up for y'all?
Yes.
Great. So I want to run through some things. I want to talk a little bit about this National Academy's stuff we've been doing, because it is pretty hopeful, and update you on things that's happened since our last call. Kaden and I, we do a number of different presentations to various neighborhood groups and other stakeholders across the city. And, Kaden said it is important to remind people every now and then about where we are with this Army Corps project. And so I just want to sort of discuss this briefly with you. So again, we all recall this kicked off in 2018. Feasibility study, again, a 3x3x3, so 3 years, $3 million, 3 levels of review. That is a process that the Army Corps must follow for these things. Our process was actually $3.8 million and almost 4 levels or 4 years of effort, simply because after the tentatively selected plan that was released in April of 2020, a lot of public comments came in and said, please do an environmental impact statement. And that was done and it's completed. So that took a little bit of time. So that's great. Comments came in. We revised the plan, or the Army Corps revised the plan, the tentatively selected plan, and made it an optimized plan that was released in September of 2021. Right as I started in this position, there was still some concerns. And so the Army Corps went back to the drawing board on this and redrew the line of protection on the eastern side to include the port properties. We went through a number of internal processes with the Army Corps in the beginning of 2022. We got a signed chief's report, which is a process that occurs in Washington after the chief of engineers and the assistant secretary of the Army, so the civilian leader of the Army and the Pentagon, agree that this was a project that should be supported. The signed chief's report was sent to Congress in the summer, and it was included in the drafts of the Water Resources Development Act. So that's great. That is being considered as we speak. Just a reminder, here's the standard slide that you have all seen. An 8-mile surge structure at 12-foot NAV88. So not 12 feet above ground, but 12-foot NAV88. So the lowest parts of the peninsula are about 3.5 feet NAV88. So the highest top of this structure would be about 8.5 feet above ground level, still substantial, but it's not 12. No public property will be taken if we move forward with this. This is no private property, sorry. This is all, the line of protection is all on public property. Some nature-based features were added. There will be at least 10 pumps put in here to manage the overtopped and the impounded stormwater if the structure was ever built. There is a cost share to this, 65% federal, 35% non-federal. That cost number has gone up. As you know, inflation has impacted everything. So the cost right now is at 1.275 billion. That is what an adjustment was made in late October or early September to the cost when Congress was considering it, because they want to authorize it appropriately. They want to authorize the funding level appropriately in the Word bill. So the city's net cost went up too by about $30 million. Still, the net cost to the city at the end of the day, when all of the easement credits would be there, is about $250 million. Again, this would be paid in increments as the structure would be designed and then built. So it's not something you have to pay once. Highest benefit cost ratio, very high, highest in the nation. That's great. And really our design goal here, if we would move forward, is simply to say, okay, the low battery that we know that's being renovated, it's beautiful, it's multifunctional, it provides tide risk management, some surge risk management, it's a walkway, it's a tourist attraction. Could we replicate that around the peninsula in most places? That's the design goal. And we think that's possible if you get into the design phase. And if we could design a structure that met all the city's needs, historic, cultural, all those other things that are there, multi-benefit, effective, surge risk and tidal risk mitigation, and we get the feds to pay 65% of the cost, that would be something good to do. So again, we have our WRDA authorization, Water Research Development Act authorization. In the WRDA bill, internal politics or internal processes here in Congress is the WRDA bill was attached to the National Defense Authorization Bill. That is a must-pass piece of legislation that Congress considers every year. Congress passed the NDA, the National Defense Authorization Act, last week, 350 to 80, so 350 in favor, 80 members of Congress opposed. So it passed the House with an overwhelming majority. The Senate is going to consider it this week. And when it does, our authorization in the WRDA bill to move forward at the federal level will be approved. And once that occurs, keep in mind here, then the Army Corps will have to work through internal processes. They will formally approach the city to negotiate a design agreement. Before you can start PED, as you all know, we are able, as the non-federal sponsor, to highlight some things we want to pursue in design. We've already signaled to the Army Corps of Engineers, which has been reviewed by division in Atlanta and headquarters in Washington. Some of these items, the mayor sent a letter. The column on the right-hand side of the screen, if y'all can see it, shows those items. This is not an exclusive only type list. These are the things we will put in there. Of course, if we're going through the design phase, we will come across other things and we will pursue the design phase appropriately. Once the design agreement is negotiated, we will present it to City Council. City Council can consider it as is correct, their processes. And we would ask at that point for the City Council to fund the first year of the true PED phase. Or the first year or second year of PED phase to go forward. And keep in mind that request would come to City Council every year as we move through the design phase. So we will fund this as we go. And if we are unhappy with the Army Corps of Engineers in this process, we will just not provide our money to the Army Corps for the next phase of PED. And that's how we manage the process, right? They cannot go forward without us. So keep in mind, one other anomaly with the federal process, you all recall that the CSRM, this project is a surge-only project. It will have tidal mitigation benefits to us, but it is a surge-only project. The Army Corps of Engineers has authorized, and again, in discussions with them, we have requested funding, or they have requested funding for them to do a tidal and inland study, so tidal management and stormwater management across the city, so not just the peninsula. This is an authorization that exists since 2018, and Senator Graham has requested funding for the Army Corps of Engineers to meet their cost share on this process. The city is considering how to manage that and work with the Army Corps of Engineers. We want to avoid overlaps with the water plan we have under development. So this is something that is fluid, but we're working on it. And this would allow, in some ways, a way to address the legitimate criticisms, like, why is the Army Corps of Engineers only considering surge when we have other things too? And that is just a function of Army Corps processes. And this is a way you get around that to allow them in a separate work process to allow them to consider tidal and stormwater management. And again, this would not be peninsula only as the CSRM is, it would be citywide. So there's a lot going on. And I just want to share this next image with you. So we all recall Hurricane Ian at the end of September. The Army Corps, the US Navy, and others use the AdCirc model to estimate storm surge impacts or storm surge extent. And so you recall Ian made landfall just north and east of Charleston about 2 p.m. on Friday, September 30th. September 28th and September 29th, we were in the zone of danger. And this is the graphical output of the image from the AdCirc run on the morning of September 29th. It was designed to be a 10-foot, or was estimated to be a 10'7" mean low water storm surge. So that would have been the highest storm surge, second highest storm surge ever, the highest storm surge since Hurricane Hugo. And this graphic shows you what it would have looked like had it occurred. So when we were in the MEOC on the 28th and 29th, and my friends who run these models were sending me this graphic output, we were very worried. And the whole city staff working in the MEOC at that point, trying to manage the impacts of Ian, were very worried. And if you have just a sense here, look at the extent of the storm surge push across the city. So this is sort of what they call a do nothing scenario. If we would do nothing to manage storm surge and we continue to get hurricanes across the city, and keep in mind, Ian was a pretty weak storm by the time it crossed Florida and got into the Atlantic, this is still what we would have to deal with. So it's a bit scary, but it's a good graphical representation of what could have occurred, and we were preparing for this. So just keep this in mind. It didn't happen. We got fortunate, but will we continue to get lucky? That's a risk, right? And I don't know if we should take that risk. Anyway, so just want to remind everyone where we are. On a separate but related issue, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, one of the challenges with their processes is that they follow right now something called the Principles and Guidelines from 1983. And the Principles and Guidelines, if you recall President Reagan, he was saying we need government to function more like business. Benefit cost analysis as an economic process became, it was sort of started to be used in the 1960s, but in the 1980s, the advance in economic science was really good, so they started to apply benefit cost analysis to most federal projects. And the Army Corps had its own version of it, and it's called the Principles and Guidelines, and it really requires the highest benefit for the lowest cost of the federal government. So they try to achieve with federal projects the highest benefit for the lowest cost, and they use structure damage, structure contents, and damage for those contents, and business interruption to determine what kind of damages they're trying to mitigate. And this is called the NED, the National Economic Development Model. And that is what governed our process. That is what still governs all Army Corps processes. A lot of people realized in the 90s and 2000s that this was sort of insufficient to what the federal government should be doing. So the Army Corps has been trying to update and change its policies, its internal policies, to allow something different, to consider more than just lowest benefit or highest benefit, lowest cost. And in 2014, the Army Corps released, or the Council on Environmental Quality in the White House released proposed changes to the Principles and Guidelines from 1983, and they called those the Principles, Requirements, and Guidelines of 2014. This is Army Corps jargon. I'm sorry, but I just want to explain how this works. Those principles, requirements, and guidelines are a substantial improvement to what the Army Corps of Engineers can look at when they look at feasibility and alternatives to screen when they're through what would be the best project. And the PRG sets forth 6 co-equal guiding principles and overarching concepts here to be considered. So it's not just highest benefit, lowest cost, it's these things here on the left-hand side. Healthy and resilient ecosystems, sustainable economic development, public safety, watershed approach to decision-making, environmental justice. If the PRG would be adopted by the Army Corps of Engineers, now you have a much more robust set of things you can look at as an Army Corps of Engineers process. A member of Congress or a number of members of Congress in 2016 put a rider on the Army Corps of Engineers prohibiting them from considering the PRG. So a subset of Congress said, Army Corps of Engineers, you have to stay with NED, so highest benefit, lowest cost, and you cannot consider these other things. It's awful. In 2020, that rider was not extended, and in 2021, and under the current administration, they have made a commitment to try to work through and implement the PRG. In May of this year, the National Academies of Science held a workshop, and I participated in that on behalf of the city to try to push this forward. We had another workshop on November 30th in Washington, D.C. with the senior leadership of the Army Corps of Engineers to try to implement or get the federal government to implement the PRG. Very positive workshop at the end of November. I presented the Charleston case that we needed better than just NED, right? We needed better. We needed to have the flexibility to pursue more than just NED. We understand that there is going to be a rulemaking, so federal process or regulatory process started in early 2023 to make the PRG the guiding principles for the Army Engineers. So this is sort of peripheral to our project, but it is essential as we work through the CSRM here. And as you all have heard, the Army Corps is bound in by federal policy, and we need them to be more expansive and more creative. And they want to be, and they can be, if they would have this PRG as their modus operandi going forward, or with their process going forward. We're hopeful that this will occur. Rulemaking often takes about a year because the federal, they will issue a draft rule. The draft rule can be commented upon by anyone. So there will be people in support of this and people will be opposed to this and people saying, well, maybe you want to nudge it this way or that way. That is rulemaking as it occurs at the federal level. All those comments will be considered. The draft will be revised, and there will be a final rule proposed with changes to the draft rule, and then it will eventually go into effect. That is how rulemaking occurs. If we could get this PRG adopted by late 2023 or 2024, not we, but collectively the US, it would be a substantial improvement. This is really exciting stuff. And, you know, the city of Charleston, we're trying to position ourselves to be leaders in this. We actually, at this conference at the end of November, I asked the people assembled in the room, let's make Charleston a pilot to do this stuff, to do this right. So we'll see if they take us up on that, but you know, we want to be a leader, and this is the way we could be a leader. So it's encouraging. Yes.
If I could jump in just with a quick question, sorry to interrupt. How does this impact, and I can take guesses at the ways, but I'd like to hear your take on how does this impact our project, our you know, the 3x3 project here?
As we've noted before, we think we have the flexibility within the current P&G, so the current policy. We think we have the flexibility to do all the things we need to do, right, to make this a much better structure for the city of Charleston. We're confident of that, but we need to negotiate this, right? That's the design agreement negotiation. We have these mitigations and betterments. If you recall that discussion, mitigations are things to the original design that the federal government would have to pay for as we go through the PED process. Whoops, we find something crazy. We couldn't move it here. We couldn't build it there, whatever. That change, that's a mitigation. Those changes would have to be paid for by the feds. If we want to gold plate the metal, if we want to add some bells and whistles, upsize the pumps, those are betterments, and then we would pay for the marginal cost increase for those. So that is what's required under the P&G. If we would have the PR&G, we could consider these other things, and that would be the project feature, and we would cost share those things, 65-35, right? It's environmental justice. This is the Rosemont and their Bridgeview Apartments areas up in the northern part of in the Upper Peninsula. Sustainable economic development. We could work on these things if we had the PR&G. But if the PR&G goes into draft rulemaking, we can point to this during PED and say, look, this, you have the P&G and we have the flexibility to do this under the P&G. However, we're going to point to the PR&G and say, we want to show you how to do this so you can all see how this is good. This is what I mean, make Charleston a pilot for this. So again, it's pretty important. And again, that tidal and inland study I mentioned that Congress is trying to fund for us citywide, we could use the PR&G for that. Because that work probably wouldn't start it probably would start until the end of 2023 or 2024. So if this is adopted, then we can, and this idea is of, healthy and resilient ecosystems in West Ashley or on Cane Hoy or on James Island or Johns Island, and, avoiding unwise use of floodplains, this would be pretty important for us, right? So the tidal and inland study would be ripe to use this kind of, to use the PR&G. Does that answer your question? Okay, good. And so it's really exciting. It's all insider politics with all these acronyms from the Army Corps of Engineers, but we're on it. We're trying to nudge the Army Corps. And again, it's not just the city of Charleston, it's a lot of other cities, plus the National Academies of Science, plus a lot of engineering companies who want this flexibility. So a lot of people are pushing here. It feels really good. Again, I've been monitoring this since 2014, 2013. And it feels positive right now. So fingers crossed. That's my advocacy for the day. So just two quick updates here. One of the challenges we have in the city is sea level rise impacting the performance of our existing overland drainage systems. And we have development that occurs in the floodplain that is on slab on grade. This is in the external areas of the city, this new development. The Dutch Dialogues has said, let's try to avoid the use of fill in the 100-year floodplain because that displaces water and it changes the hydrology of the floodplain basin. City Council has considered various versions of how to ban fill across the city. The Stormwater Design Standards Manual of 2020 has some recommendations or processes to really limit the use of fill in what's called the special flood hazard areas. We have worked with the realtors, the Chamber of Commerce, the home builders, the Coastal Conservation League, the Southern Environmental Law Center, and the Historic Charleston Foundation to come up with a consensus recommendation to City Council to ban slab on grade in the 100-year floodplain. So for any new residential construction, ban slab on grade. This is a way, if you ban slab on grade, that means the houses have to be built on pier and beam or what's called stem wall. And if you do that, you don't need fill on that parcel. So this is a roundabout way or a different way to get to reducing the use of fill across the city. And we had a workshop with City Council November 28th. It's on YouTube. There were a lot of good questions. Again, we made a number of recommendations to this, and we intend to present City Council with draft ordinance language in early 2023 to implement this. And then it would follow the implementation processes that the city's Stormwater Design Standards Manual followed in 2020. It would give the developers, the builders, 6 months, 8 months transition period to start to understand what this would mean for them and how they would have to do this. And so this is a really exciting development. Just want to let you know. And so oddly enough, one of the areas in the city that has the most amount property or landmass of the city in the 100-year floodplain is the peninsula. And so you see the marshes in the green, and then you see that sort of skin colored area around the margins. That's the 100-year floodplain on the peninsula. And you can see over in West Ashley, where the 100-year floodplain is. And what we'd be doing, and this extends across the city and up into Berkeley County parts of the city, we would essentially eliminate fill in these areas by using the slab on grade issue for residential. So this is pretty exciting stuff. And this is a way we get at some of our larger flood risk management efforts. So let's see what's going on here. Let's see how successful we are with council. We sensed a solid majority for this. Still some things to tailor in the draft ordinance language, so we'll work on that, but it's exciting stuff. Just want to let you all know, we mentioned over the summer and through the early fall, we had the Resilience Office, with the help of other city departments, we had updated the city's formal flooding and sea level rise strategy. It is ready to go. It will be an online only version. We are just waiting for some final edits from the stormwater department there. And let me see if I can share my screen differently. Give me a second. There's too many things open here. There we go. Well, exactly, I'm not going to do it. It's too complicated, but I want to run you through it. Anyway, we built off the 2015 and the 2019 strategies, flooding and sea level rise strategies. We improved it. We have better science in it. We've brought more of the project stuff that we've been doing, the projects we've been doing, the governance changes, the policy changes, the partnerships, all those things, part of the strategy. We clarified more what the city is doing in this document. It will be online in a storyboard only format. If you would print this, it would be 100+ pages. And our goal is to show or make accessible to citizens what the city is doing across these areas with our plan, with infrastructure projects, our land use, our governance, our resources, and our outreach and partnerships, right? Those are the 5 concepts or focal areas of the sea level rise strategy. And again, each of these windows here that you're seeing on my screen, they have a lot of stuff buried underneath them. So you can click through it, and there's a lot of images here. So you can see what the city is doing. And our goal would be to maintain this as we go, not to update the strategy every 4 or 5 years. Because as soon as you publish a strategy and you think we're going to update it in 4 years, it's already out of date. So we want to update this on the go. It's a different approach to this. The mayor has seen it. Some members of council have seen it, and it's received favorable reviews so far. So we feel pretty good about this. And then my final item, 2 final items here. Again, the water plan is moving forward. They've done a lot of reconnaissance and research. They're starting to get some ideas of ideas for strategies across the various city neighborhoods. We anticipate some workshops with stakeholders in March across the city. So that'll be 2 or 3 weeks of sort of very heavy work. Again, across the city, not just here at City Hall, but in West Ashley and Johns Island and James Island and Daniel Island and on Canehoy. So that's great. Again, they're making good progress. Just you all supported that, and so you ought to know about that. We'll update you as we go along. And then finally, you all recall the Rosemont resilience issue. The city committed to funding a resilience plan for the community of Rosemont and Bridgeview Apartments up on the other side of the Upper Peninsula, simply because they were concerned about the non-structural solutions that were recommended for them with the Army Corps project. So this committee recommended, hey, fund a resilience plan for them. City Council approved that. At the same time, the Low Country Alliance for Model Communities, which is an environmental justice and social justice organization here in Charleston, or here in the Charleston region, they applied for NFWF, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation funding, which is that's a semi-federal agency. they applied for additional funding, and the goal was, well, if they would get that grant funding, we would combine that with the existing city funding, and then the Rosemont community and the water plan team and the city and the Low Country Alliance for Model Communities would develop the resilience plan together. Happy news, NIFWIF awarded the funding to Low Country Alliance for Model Communities last week. That's a big deal. And we're just waiting for that money to become available, and we will start to scope this resilience plan project with the community. It's very exciting, and we're just happy to have good partners here. And the goal or the outputs of the resilience plan will really help the community develop strategies for current and future flood risk mitigation, not just for storm surge, but for all of the above, and also deal with some other environmental conditions they have up there, polluted soils, mobility, access, and things like that. And it'll also become a set of recommendations to the Army Corps of Engineers if and when we get into PED for what we would want to do with them. So it's a very important project. So that's a lot of information I just gave to you, but we're not sitting still here. We keep moving forward. So happy to answer any questions for you all about this. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thanks, Phil. I have a quick question, which is, going back to the mayor's design letter. Of course, we made a number of recommendations as a committee to City Council, all of which were put forward over the last 2 years. How do we ensure that those recommendations are incorporated into that design letter? What does that look like from our standpoint?
We have everything the committee has said. A lot of those bullets listed on the one slide I showed, those are a summary. Those are keywords for your recommendations. They've already been communicated. And what I would say is this is when we get, or my commitment to you all is when we start negotiating the design agreement, we can focus our one of our meetings or part of one of our meetings in the future and whatever in early 2023 or mid 2023, again, when that negotiation starts to occur with what goes into the design agreement, we will raise this issue, allow you all to comment on it and provide ideas or suggestions. I think we have everything in the design agreement letter we've already sent. I think we have all of the issues the committee has already communicated, but we're happy to, this has to be transparent and open, and we will, my word is that it will be.
Great, thank you. Let's see, so I'll start off with Rick. I see you have a question. Please go for it.
Yeah, Dale, I know for this committee, we're heavily talking about the storm surge, but I know there's so many projects related to tidal and stormwater management within the peninsula. And is the update, that slide that you just said on the sea level rise strategy update, does it summarize kind of all the projects like the stormwater and tidal projects and pump system like Fishburne Tunnel and some of the others like that? So we have because it's really a combination of both. You got to be able to do the daily block and tackle along with the piece on storm surge. So I'm just trying to educate myself and be able to articulate that to the committee about when are those projects queued up and when are they going to be accomplished? Because I know the pumping system, I think, is like 24 or something, isn't it?
Yes. So the flooding and sea level rise strategy. So I'm going to try to walk and chew gum here at the same time. So if you see my eyes bouncing around, it's because I'm trying to pull up the flooding and sea level rise strategy. Hold on. And I'm going to try to share it with you.
I can pull it up, Dale, if you want to keep talking.
I got it. Hold on. Okay. Tell me if you all see my screen. Tell me when you see the screen.
I see it.
Okay, good. So here is the flooding and sea level rise strategy. Again, if you click through these things, this is the introduction, right? So there's a bunch of new science that's put that we, our intern work with NOAA and NASA and all those other things. And then we have the city already had a bunch of existing information that was in bits and pieces across the city websites, and we knitted this together. So this is great. And again, you can navigate this site pretty easily, but if you come to this is the infrastructure section, Rick, is we're waiting for the stormwater department to approve all the language that we drafted for them, and we actually used a lot of their information. We just updated it. So here you get a sense. I'm working through. You can see me moving through this thing. Here's your update on the Spring Fishburne. Here's the current status. What's going to happen? What's happened? You know, with how this thing works. The medical district, the Earhart drop shaft tunnel, the low battery restoration. Project over in West Ashley, Forest Acres. Here's a suburban area that's getting some, you know, the stormwater department is doing great work over there trying to help this area move forward, and it gives you a sense of what's going to happen. And then again, King and Eugene up on the upper part of the peninsula, this area floods all the time, and the city's been doing work up there. It's still going on. Here's our Church Creek thing. So I think you just get a sense. What I just showed you is the flooding and sea level rise strategy is meant to bring all this together so you all can then go and look at it. And so does that answer your question, Rick?
Yes, it did. I knew I kind of gotten a preview at your city, you know, forums and stuff. And so I was hoping everything would be there in that infrastructure tab.
Right. So again, we have a land use tab, we have an infrastructure tab, we have a governance tab. This is the governance stuff is, you know, the land and water analysis and the comp plan, which is very important for the city to go forward. We have a resources tab, so where are we getting money, and you know, who can we rely upon to help us? And then we have this partnerships and outreach section. And the partnerships and outreach section is going to be really hard for us to keep up to date. Kevin here from the aquarium is on the committee. The aquarium is doing a lot of really important work that is cumulative to what the city is doing. It's really helping us. And we want to recognize all these partnerships. We're in pilots with some national organizations, and we want to reference that, but there's a lot of that stuff. So we're going to have to work on trying to keep that up to date. You know, and I think this is also a spot if Dan and others, you want to talk about what's happening over in Union Pier, if we want to incorporate that, and Dan and the developers there and the port wants us to do that, we can add this in there, because this is designed to be our strategy, but also to be our communication strategy, right? It's a policy strategy, an investment strategy, an infrastructure strategy, as well as a communication strategy. And we put that all together in this one storyboard. It was a lot of work. So I have gray hair. Anyway.
Thank you. Andrew, please go for it. I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. So Dale, real interested to hear about the effort to get the Corps a more updated set of guiding principles. I think that's absolutely critical. I mean, it's one of the criticisms that we hear all the time. And so, you know, really excited to hear that. I wonder if there's any opportunity for public engagement or advocacy to support that effort. Would assume our legislative delegation is pretty supportive of that effort. So can we, you know, send them letters, phone calls, emails, whatever it is, in support of that position that, you know, the Charleston community as a whole would like to see these guidelines updated and are supportive of that effort. I think those kinds of you know, in the digital advocacy world, they're called a thank message instead of a spank message, so to speak. And so when you can thank your elected leaders for doing what you want them to, I think it's an important, you know, an important opportunity to take if we can do that. You know, so is the time right for that, or when will it be right for that, and would it be helpful?
I think the time is so. Let me be clear. We've already communicated to the congressional delegation as a city that we want this flexibility. We need this flexibility. We also, in fact, know that a lot of the staff inside the Corps of Engineers would like to have this flexibility, but they don't. And because they're a military organization, they don't advocate for this. They follow the rules that they have, right? That's their process. We need to be respectful of that. But I think a lot of them, my personal opinion is a lot of them want this new flexibility. So great. When the draft proposed rule comes out, Caitlin and I will make a note to inform you all. And I think at that point, if you deem it appropriate collectively or individually to advocate to our congressional delegation and submit comments. I mean, you all as collectively or individually can submit comments to the rulemaking. This would be, I'm trying not to advocate, but it would be awesome.
Okay. Yeah, please keep us updated
Yeah.
when that rulemaking comes out.
Yeah. The anticipation is early 2023, and side conversations at the National Academies meeting at the end of November was there is bipartisan support. So both sides of the political aisle support this change.
Good.
So it's good. It's helpful.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you all. So we are coming up on 10:15. We do have a handful of other items to work through. Susan and Jack, I saw your hand go up and go back down. I was going to say, if we get past time, send, email the question and we'll get it addressed. But Susan, I just saw yours up first, so I'll go ahead and go with you. And if you could, please, and answer as well. Just be mindful of that 10:15 time frame. Thank you.
Oh, I'll be real quick. I want to follow what Andrew said and just indicate that I think that our group here, this advisory committee, needs to shore up its voice. And in conjunction with public engagement, I would like to, at some point when there's time, talk about enhanced communication from this group, because it's sort of not happening. And I think it really should, especially since the activities of both the feds and the local government are upcoming. And I think that part of our directives from the ordinance are to communicate better with the public about it. And so I think I, as communications person, need some direction, and I think we should sort of brainstorm on how we can do a better job with this. But I think we should indeed do a resolution or something in support of what Dale was talking about. I think that would be critical. Thank you.
Thank you. I can take that one. I mean, we have those working groups. Maybe it makes sense to get another meeting set up with those to dive deeper into that topic, as far as what kind of shape that would take. So, yeah, that'd be my thought there. Well, good. Well, we were right on time. Galen, would you mind? I can share it, but we just wanted to pull up the ordinance to go through two aspects of it. One of which was the composition and procedural points with regards to we're reaching the end of our initial 2-year term, and so membership is 14 members of this committee, all appointed by the mayor. From different communities and representing different groups, and each of those members has an initial 2-year term. If they choose and the mayor appoints them, they can serve a second 2-year term, but no more than 2 consecutive 2-year terms for each member. And so one procedural item is, if you could please reach out to Dale and Cale, and feel free to copy me if you'd like, so that they can pass along whether you'd like to continue for a second term or not, to provide that information to the mayor for consideration, is really the main point there. And then the folks that replaced midterm some of the members that rolled off, such as Rick and Jack and Andrew, for example, if you could please do the same, because this would be considered, and Kayla and Dale, correct me if I'm wrong, but this would be considered that initial term. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Great. Thank you. So that is, on membership, that's the one directive I'd leave everybody with. On upcoming meetings for this first quarter, I'm going to go ahead and share the ordinance, so I don't have to listen to me read it out loud for the next 10 minutes. There we go. Can y'all Well, zoomed in too much, but can y'all see that okay, the screen?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So this is, the bulk of it. I think the purpose section is what you're looking at on the screen, purpose of the committee. So we had a lot of great points that were brought up with when most recently requested for meeting topics for this upcoming first quarter and ongoing after that. A lot of them had to do with other City of Charleston projects. I mean, very relevant. They tie in very well, and the city's done a lot to tie together all of the different projects going right now, as we saw in Dale's presentation earlier. So with that in mind, I wanted to make sure we went through the ordinance here in order to help spur additional thoughts on upcoming meeting topics. And so, I won't read them word for word, but just going through those, basically reviewing the study, as we've all done in an early stage, providing recommendations to the council regarding the study's recommendations, which we've done, recommend strategies for city participation in PED phases as designed by, mayor and city council. Thirdly, researching other cities that have funded similar infrastructure projects. Most recent example of that being Norfolk, and Dale and Kayla and I were talking about other similar projects over the last week. So that is a meeting topic that I think merits bringing back up again to go through these additional cities. And I think it's very important that these are very smart, sharp, experienced, high-level people that we're leveraging Dale and Kayla's relationships for. So making sure that that we really focus heavily on those presentations as we approach the PED phase, becoming much more real, maybe the word for it. Next, focusing on Charleston Peninsula, protection of life and property thereon, and how the study of Charleston Peninsula meets those objectives. One topic, and this goes to another point later as well. One topic that I've been thinking about is insurance and risk mitigation, and how the city, as well as third parties in the private sector, would be looking at this project, the 3x3 project, the seawall project. So I think different aspects of that. Next, looking in other cities to help inform City of Charleston's next steps, I think procedurally as well. Next, reporting on impacts, other areas of the city as a result of the storm surge barrier. I think Dale and Kalen have been good to get ahead of a lot of that information. I think we saw some of the modeled impacts to other parts of the cities over our last few meetings. So I think that's a good example of that topic, ordinance topic. Identifying, discussing, and promoting peninsula strategies for addressing storm surge protection. I think we've done a good job of focusing there, and flooding from all causes. A good job of focusing there. And then, finally, I think this goes to Susan's point earlier, identifying and expanding communication opportunities between all, relevant stakeholders. And so I think that communications working group, I think we can huddle up separately, come up with some good ideas, and bring them back to the committee at large. So, with all that said, having gone through the points on upcoming meeting topics that specifically relate to our ordinance, and then also, procedurally following up on the membership. Are there any questions, thoughts, discussion? I want to make sure we leave time for that on potential upcoming meeting topics. I will leave the screen up in case we need to reference anything. Not hearing any. I'll bring up another one. Jordy and Dan, I've seen a lot of your design charrettes. It's very exciting. Of course, that goes to a number of these different ordinance factors. And do y'all have any kind of updates on timing or how that's gone to date? And if it would be good from a timing standpoint and y'all's process to discuss any further with the committee as it relates to the seawall and y'all's project?
Dan, you want to go or you want me to take it?
I'll let you take it and then I'll add color if necessary.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Haygood. So we are firmly moving into the city's formal process for approval of the project. The city had a planning commission information session earlier this week where Jacob Lindsay and the design team shared the images to date and lots of information about the project, highlighting the resiliency components, aligning with the city and the Army Corps with where we are in terms of seawall protection. So really great. We really enjoyed great response and feedback thus far in the process. So I think starting in the new year, we move firmly into the city's formal process of all that. So over the course of the next several months, there will be opportunities for the community to participate in public hearings at all different levels of the city's approval process. So look for those postings. We'll certainly share it with, I'm sure Dale and Kaylin will have it as well with the group. So we're excited about it, transformational for the city, and just really proud of where we are at this stage. We've had terrific feedback about how much we've engaged with the community. More than 1,000 people came to those charrettes that you mentioned, but even more people have been reached beyond that on the project. We're doing some updates to our website, so stand by for that. It's been a little clunky, I know, and we apologize for that. So we're working on that so folks can have access to, to the images thus far and things of that nature. So Dan, you want to add anything?
All I'll add is that with respect to resiliency and what we have been doing, we actually did engage the team from Sherwood. I know that a lot of folks on this committee are familiar with them, and they have been doing a phenomenal job working on the coastal resiliency portions of the program for Union Pier. And so we're very pleased with that. I think that, and Dale, I know you've spent time with Jordy and Jacob and myself to go through some of the items that we're addressing on Union Pier. I think also it's been great that the port, similar to what was done for the Queen Street Basin, I know the port has been very active in assisting the city in providing the check valves for the other storm water basins that actually outflow underneath Union Pier. I think that's going to help tremendously in the long run. So that's kind of from the perspective of its impact on this committee and how it would dovetail into any future perimeter protection. I think that we've been working the port and low side by side with the city to make sure everything we're doing makes sense in regards to what the future may hold for that project.
Thank you very much, Dan and Jordy.
Hey, good. I would just add from the city. So Dan and Jacob Lindsay, I would say it was less than 2 weeks ago. We had a 2-hour meeting about the project, the process forward, goals to achieve going forward with stormwater as well as storm surge tidal risk mitigation out there, and the folks at Sherwood. I know them, and so this is an open and transparent process, and I would say the city, certainly from my perspective, I very much appreciate that. I think this allows us to achieve a high level of success going forward.
Great. Well, certainly a great team and great stakeholders as well. So thank you for that update. Seeing we have a little bit of time left, Dale, I think if you wouldn't mind, we touched on some of the similar cities of course, going through Norfolk. If you would mind touching on those again as well, that'd be good to set a framework for, an upcoming meeting in this first quarter, second quarter. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should know. We can go to New York. We can go to Miami. We can go to other parts of Florida. We can go to Houston and Galveston. There are a lot, and we can go to San Francisco. Again, there are a lot of places we can go to. So I'll work with you, and we'll set up a couple of those sort of quicker briefings like we had from Norfolk. You can see where they are and what they're doing. Okay.
I think that'd be very helpful. Thank you. As we approach closing out the meeting, any other comments, thoughts, questions, anything along those lines? Great. Well, not seeing any. I think our list of action items after this meeting are: number one, Susan, we need to get a communications working group meeting on the books. Number two, I'll put forward requests again. Any additional meeting topics, please send them on. I think there's a lot to go through here, and as committee members, we're all stakeholders and citizens. So, please put those forward. And then thirdly, procedurally, please send, whether you'd like to be on the committee for a subsequent term over to Dale and Kale. And again, feel free to copy me in on that. I think
Just
that,
quickly,
I think that's
hey, good
yeah, please.
for process wise, because, the mayor puts the recommendations forth the council. So, we'll need to go before city council again, and we're up on our 2 years in April. So if everybody could just let us know this decision by like the end of January, so we can get that long kind of review process started from the mayor and city council, that would be really helpful. Thanks.
Can do. Well, great. I think that covers us. Have plenty to do between now and our next meeting. So be on the lookout for email on that timing. And thanks everybody for joining today. Appreciate the update, Dale. Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Happy holidays.